Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending. Those of you attending in person, those of you viewing in live via webinar. My name is Julian Nunn of the Enterprise Bureau here at CDSS. The CDSS Exchange is a monthly speaker series that we try to put on, regularly showcasing work that's being done within the department by some of the programs here that impact Californians, or the work being done by outside organizations that has a major impact on work being done by CDSS employees or agency employees as well. Again, thank you for tuning in live via webinar. If any of you have questions here in the audience as we go along or during the Q&A period, please raise your hand and we'll run out to you with a microphone. That way the people watching via webinar can also hear. With that, I'd like to welcome the Housing and Homelessness Bureau. Please give them a warm welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. My name is Pilucci Huerta, and I am part of the Housing and Homelessness Bureau here at CDSS. Today's CDSS Exchange is about our department's housing and homelessness programs administered at the county level. We have a lot to cover, so in the hopes of keeping you awake, we've broken down the information into a few sections, each presented by a different analyst. And I'm here to begin by showing you where our bureau fits in our department. So our bureau is under the Housing, Homelessness, and Civil Rights Branch, which is the newest branch in the Family Engagement and Empowerment Division, also known as FEED. As some of you might know, the Housing and Homelessness Bureau originated out of CalWORKs in 2016. We have more than tripled in size since then. The Housing Bureau is split into 2 units based on the population served, the Children and Families Unit and the Individuals Unit. The Children and Families Unit oversees the administration of the CalWORKs Homeless Assistance Program, the CalWORKs Housing Support Program, and the Bringing Families Home Program. On the other hand, the Individuals Unit oversees the administration of the Housing, Disability, and Advocacy Program, also known as HDAP, and the Home Safe Program, which is actually still in its pilot phase. So how many of you here are familiar with any of these programs? You might know 1 or 2 of them. You do, cool, that's a lot of you, great. So yeah, these are the 5 housing programs that CDSS funds, and the combined funding totals over $300 million. These housing programs often serve the same clients that many social services programs also serve, like CalWORKs, child welfare, county general assistance, or general relief programs, disability benefits programs, and adult protective services. Apart from CalWORKs homeless assistance, CDSS also allocates funds to county welfare departments on a competitive basis, taking into account the level of need within the local community. In addition to program and policy development, as well as oversight, the Bureau also serves as a statewide technical assistance provider to all of California's social services agencies. Underlying our oversight practice, we work with counties to ensure that our programs are operated in collaboration with the federally funded but locally staffed homelessness continuum of care, which can look different throughout the state. We also work to ensure our state-funded programs are operated in alignment with the Housing First core components, which are now required by state law. But before my fellow analyst, Jeannie, gets into Housing First, let me tell you why we are here today. We all work in the same department, but it can feel like we are worlds apart. Let me highlight for you the partnership between homeless service systems and social services. First, we know that homelessness affects multiple systems in California. Recognizing the intersection within those systems means that collaboration between all these systems is critical for the success of clients, for the success of each social services program, and for resolving homelessness system-wide. Secondly, social services agencies have access to some of the most vulnerable folks in our communities, and now we have additional resources to address the housing needs of our communities. It is crucial that we play our roles in these broader solutions to end homelessness, and it is also crucial to ensure that those experiencing homelessness have access to California's public benefits programs. As we are all part of this larger system, we must provide services using an individual-centered, housing-first approach. The delivery of safety net programs should feel seamless to the client, even when behind the scenes, it takes a lot of organized coordination across systems for this approach to be successful. As part of this organized coordination between systems, the CDSS Housing Bureau provides regular and targeted technical assistance to counties through in-person learning forums and site visits, webinars, monthly statewide program conference calls, and individualized correspondence. Additionally, the Bureau participates in statewide advisory councils, including the Homeless Coordinating and Financing Council, whose goal is to streamline access to housing programs for more Californians in need of support. So this is a graphic that was published by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development in 2018. We all already know that homelessness in California is at crisis levels, but this graphic shows us that 130,000 Californians are without homes. Though our state accounts for roughly only 12% of the nation's total population, we disproportionately have 24% of the nation's total sheltered and unsheltered population of people experiencing homelessness. According to the 2018 HUD Annual Homeless Report to Congress, or AHAR, on a single night in January 2018, nearly half of all unsheltered people experiencing homelessness in the country were in California at 47%. Further, this green and blue pie chart illustrates California's sheltered and unsheltered homeless populations. And as you can see, California has a high unsheltered number of people experiencing homelessness at 69%, which is also the highest in the country. For context, although New York is second to California with 17% of the nation's homeless population, only 4.7 are unsheltered in New York versus 69% in California. The estimates of homelessness here on the right further breaks down the California populations experiencing homelessness. In case we have any math whizzes in here who notice that these 5 numbers exceed the total 130,000 of homeless people, homeless California residents, we should point out that the last 3 numbers, unaccompanied homeless youth, veterans, and chronically homeless individuals, are a subset of the 109,000 people included in the count of individuals experiencing homelessness. Sorry, that was a mouthful. But anyone have any questions about this graph? Sure you do, but we have a lot more to go. Last slide for me. That was a lot of information. That's the reality we are facing. But we do have some uplifting news. The number of unsheltered families in California has decreased by 19% over the last 5 years. One of our programs, the CalWorks Housing Support Program, which was created in 2014, has been nationally recognized as playing a significant part in this reduction of family homelessness in California. And next, before Michelle and Chris dive into the CDSS housing programs, Jeannie will go over the Housing First core components. Thank you.
All right, thanks Palucci for that great introduction to homelessness in California and how CDSS is doing their part to solve this crisis. My name is Jeannie McKendry and I work in the Children and Families Unit of the Housing and Homelessness Bureau. Like Palucci said, before diving into the specifics of our 5 housing programs, we wanted to provide a quick overview of Housing First to give you a general framework from which all of our housing programs are built around. The Housing First philosophy is defined as an evidence-based approach to addressing homelessness that connects homeless individuals and families to permanent housing as quickly as possible without preconditions. This law is in alignment with the general direction that CDSS is moving of a more client-centered holistic approach to care. So as of July 1st this year, it's now California state law that all state-funded or administered programs that provide housing or housing-related services to people experiencing homelessness or at risk of homelessness must follow the core components of Housing First. So I'll go over the basic philosophy of Housing First, but if you're interested in the gory details or reading the statute, we have a slide at the very end of this PowerPoint that has all of the relevant bills that we'll go over just in my presentation as well as Michelle and Chris's. All right, So it seems obvious, but it does need to be said. Homelessness is first and foremost a housing problem. People experiencing homelessness may very well have other challenges in addition to being unhoused, but if you provide them housing, you have, in fact, solved their homelessness. So Housing First is rooted in the philosophy that safe, stable housing is a fundamental human need that must be secured before any other issues that may have contributed to a person's homelessness can effectively be addressed. It follows a basic principle that everyone is ready for housing, regardless of the complexity or severity of their needs, and that stable housing is the foundation for achieving other goals. Said another way, instead of requiring people to stabilize before receiving housing, the Housing First approach focuses on helping people achieve stability in housing first, and then once they're stably housed, they can then use this stability as a platform for achieving all other health and social services goals. To draw a distinction, on the other end of the Housing First philosophy is the traditional concept of housing readiness. And housing readiness requires people experiencing homelessness to address their barriers, including behavioral health or substance use issues, or to complete a series of services and programs before they're considered ready to be housed. So during this time, they may be living in a shelter, a sober living community, or a transitional housing facility. So the Housing First philosophy counters this traditional concept of housing readiness and asserts that housing should always come first. So before we move on to the next slide, I'd ask that you admire this beautiful rainbow pyramid. In addition to being pretty, I think it does a good job of illustrating the importance of a solid base where your safety, security, and physical needs are met, upon which everything else is built. In case you can't see, the red there is physiological needs, and then safety and security. And then above that, we've got love, belonging, self-esteem, self-actualization. So got to have that base core in order to work your way up on the rest of those things. So this slide illustrates the difference between the typical housing readiness philosophy compared to a housing first approach in housing programs. So on top there, the typical housing readiness approach has numerous steps or fail points, that's in the red, where a person can lose access to permanent housing. It's almost as if they have to prove they're worthy of housing, and if they fail any of those steps in this housing ready tests, then they stay unhoused. As you can imagine, the more barriers a person has, the less likely they're able to prove that they're quote unquote ready for housing. So the Housing First approach removes all these barriers, so individuals and families are housed as soon as possible and given the best chance to be able to reach life stability. So dealing with substance abuse, increasing your income, addressing your mental health needs, these are all hard tasks under the very best of circumstances. Can you imagine how hard it must be to, say, fight addiction or address your mental health needs while in the middle of the crisis of not knowing where you're going to sleep that night? So Housing First asserts if you remove the immediate crisis of homelessness by housing them, individuals and families are much more likely to be able to tackle their other life's goals. So simply put, Housing First is really a paradigm shift in which programs provide easy access to housing without program or policy barriers. There's a real pretty chart image on this one that's not showing up. That was weird. Okay. That was it. So we just had an extra ghost slide in there. So this is my last Housing First slide before we move on to the CDSS administered housing programs. So like with all paradigm shifts, there are often misconceptions that need to be cleared up. So this slide counters some of the misconceptions about what Housing First is and what Housing First is not. So first of all, Housing First is not a program such as permanent supportive housing or rapid rehousing. Rather, it's a system-wide philosophy or orientation and response that all types of housing programs and interventions can follow. Secondly, the Housing First philosophy is not a one-size-fits-all approach. Rather, it promotes flexibility, individualized supports, client choice, and autonomy. A Housing First approach can benefit both families as well as individuals experiencing homelessness with any degree of service needs. Housing First programs typically provide flexible rental assistance that varies in duration depending on the household's specific needs. Services are offered as needed on a voluntary basis, and housing is not contingent on participation in services. The third one down there, Housing First also does not mean housing only. Instead, Housing First acknowledges social services and care coordination are key elements of housing stability and quality of life. Within the Housing First framework, supportive services such as mental health, substance abuse, or employment counseling are offered to support people with housing stability and well-being. Participation is encouraged but not required to access or maintain housing. Case management is focused on meeting the needs of each individual or household where they are and utilizes strength-based practices focused on participant engagement, such as motivational interviewing, client-centered counseling, and harm reduction. Housing First is also not setting people up for failure. Rather, it's a proven method of ending all types of homelessness and the most effective approach to ending chronic homelessness, according to the U.S. Interagency Council on Homelessness. So study after study all across the country has shown that Housing First yields high housing retention rates, low returns to homelessness, and significant reductions in the use of crisis services and institutions. Lastly, Housing First is not a way to prioritize one population over another. Rather, it helps to ensure that the most vulnerable individuals and families are not screened out or overlooked for those that are easier to serve. Programs that follow a housing readiness philosophy are less likely to successfully house high barrier individuals or families. So during the rest of this presentation, as we describe the 5 housing programs that we oversee, please keep in mind that while Housing First may look different in different programs, that all of our department's housing programs follow this Housing First philosophy. So that was a pretty high level overview of Housing First. Does anyone have any questions before we move on into the meat of the programs? Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Michelle to explain the 3 programs that our unit, the family and children's. You want this?
Hello, everybody. My name is Michelle Yobi, and I'm an analyst in the Children and Families Unit. So the first program that I'm going to cover is CalWorks HA. Okay. This program is the oldest housing program in the department, and it's been around in some form or another since before even TANF was created in the mid-1990s. CalWorks HA is different from the rest of our housing programs in a few notable ways. First, it's an entitlement benefit, and it's available in all 58 counties. Secondly, HA is a CalWorks special need, and it's considered a supplemental payment to the CalWorks grant, rather than just its own housing program. And lastly, it doesn't have the robust level of services that our other programs have, like HSP and BFH, which we'll cover next. The purpose of the CalWorks HA program is to help CalWorks families meet the reasonable costs of securing housing or avoiding eviction. The CalWorks HA program serves eligible CalWorks recipients or apparently eligible CalWorks applicants who are either homeless or at risk of homelessness. There really are 2 types of CalWorks HA. There's temporary HA, which will pay up to 16 nights at a motel, and then there's permanent HA, which will pay up to 2 months of rent arrearages to prevent eviction or pay a security deposit and last month's rent to help a family secure new housing. Eligible families may receive 16 days of temp HA and 1 issuance of perm HA every 12 months, with exceptions like domestic violence or natural disaster or a verified illness. So HA is a hot topic nowadays, and legislative changes are made to the program quite frequently. And the most impactful change was in 2017 when HA became, or it went from being a once-in-a-lifetime benefit to once every 12 months. In 2018, AB 236 expanded eligibility for temp HA to CalWorks family reunification or FR cases. And before the passage of this bill, CalWorks FR cases were only eligible for services but not for cash payments. With the passage of AB 236, CalWorks FR cases are now eligible for temp HA if they are otherwise eligible, and the county determines that HA is necessary for their family reunification to occur. Also in 2018, AB 557 created a new expanded temporary HA program for CalWorks applicants who are fleeing domestic abuse. AB 557 mandates that a CalWorks applicant who provides a sworn statement of past or present domestic abuse and who is fleeing their abuser can be deemed homeless and eligible for up to 32 days of temporary HA benefits regardless of their abuser's income or assets. These AB 557 benefits are a once-in-a-lifetime benefit, but they are in addition to any other HA benefits that the applicant may be eligible for once their cash aid is approved. Oops, just kidding, let me go back. Okay. More recently, SB 80 in the 2019-20 budget bill it repealed the rule that the 16 days of temp HA must be used on consecutive days. This ensures families are allowed to access all 16 days and allow them to stretch their benefits by allowing them to use them whenever they need them in the year. And this change will become effective on January 1st of 2020, or when SAWS can automate it, which is not likely until the end of 2020, but we'll see about that. There's also a bill, AB 960, that's currently on the governor's desk, and it's awaiting his signature. And this is going to repeal the rule that families can only receive HA if they are renting from a person in the business of renting with a history of renting. If this bill passes, families will be allowed to enter into shared housing agreements, which is pretty cool, and still receive HA while doing that. And here is some cool HA data. As you can see, in fiscal year 2018-19, over 70,000 families received over $61 million in HA housing payments. And that's about 10% of these families received permanent HA, while the other 90% received temporary shelter payments. You can also find decades of HA data on our CDSS research webpage, which I hope is still up, but I don't know. As mentioned earlier, HA is considered a special needs payment for CalWORKs families rather than being its own rapid rehousing program. So it doesn't include things like case management, housing navigation, or other services. That being said, counties can, and we encourage them to use their HA benefits in conjunction with other housing programs like our HSP and BFH program. Moving on to CalWORKs HSP. Okay. In 2014, the CalWORKs HSP program was created with the goal of quickly moving eligible CalWORKs families into permanent housing by offering financial assistance and wraparound services to foster housing stability. The state requires that counties operate this program using a housing first approach and a rapid rehousing model. The program has grown pretty drastically from $20 million in 2014 and 15 to now $95 million in 2019 and 20. And as the dollar amount has also increased, so has the number of participating counties, which I will show you on a map next. So HSP, it's an optional county program where counties compete for funding. And currently we have 53 counties operating an HSP program. The only 5 that don't have our program are Alpine, Inyo, Modoc, Mono, and Sierra counties. And this is a drastic difference compared to the 20 counties that we had in 2014. So yay. In order to be eligible for HSP, the families must have at least one person in receipt of CalWORKs, and they must meet the following definition of homelessness: 1, lacking a fixed or regular nighttime residence, or there 2, in receipt of a judgment for eviction as ordered by the court. The whole definition is here on the slide if you want a more nuanced definition. Okay. The program offers various forms of financial assistance to support families, including but not limited to rental assistance, security deposits, utility payments, moving costs, hotel, motel vouchers, landlord recruitment, case management, housing outreach, legal services, and credit repair. In addition to all of these services and financial assistance, counties are required to collaborate with their homeless continuums of care and are strongly encouraged to leverage other services when possible. Many county welfare departments are or are becoming the collaborative applicant of their COCs, like Merced, Butte, Nevada, which helps integrate social services, like Jeannie was saying, into their larger homelessness system. HSP has permanently housed over 14,500 families since it was implemented in late 2014, and we have received over 46,000 requests for assistance. And like I mentioned earlier, HSP has grown significantly in the last 5 years, so we're gonna continue to serve more and more homeless CalWORKs families. Moving on to the BFH program, Bringing Families Home. The purpose of the BFH program is to reduce the number of families in the child welfare system experiencing or at risk of homelessness, increase family reunification, and prevent foster care. The program initially received $10 million over 3 years from fiscal year 2016 and 17 through 2018-19, and 12 counties were funded to operate a BFH. And now in the 2019 and 20 Budget Act, SB 80, this included a state allocation of $25 million for BFH. And these funds are available for a 3-year period from July 2019 through June 2022. The BFH program also requires a dollar-for-dollar county match that brings the budget up to really $50 million, which is twice what you see here. This map shows the 12 counties that have been operating a BFH program over the last 3 years. And competitive allocations are in progress right now for the next 3-year phase of BFH. And now that we have more money, obviously we're hoping to add more counties to this map very soon. For eligibility, the families are prioritized as follows: literally homeless families, or an individual or a family who will imminently lose their housing. BFH provides flexible housing supports, including housing-related financial assistance, housing navigation, assistance and case management, and all the items that you see here on the slide. And each program in their county is tailored to community needs, and some of them are operated in-house while others are contracted out. And along these lines, partnerships and collaboration are critical to the success of running a BFH program. BFH programs are encouraged to partner with local housing and homelessness entities like housing providers and shelters in your local housing authority, etc., as well as local child welfare agencies, social services, family resource centers, and juvenile dependency courts. Counties or tribes operating a BFH must provide evidence-based housing interventions like rapid rehousing, supportive housing, and other subsidies to make rental housing affordable as appropriate. Since program inception in July 2016, these are the numbers of the families that we have served. BFH has supported systems change within communities by helping bridge the child welfare systems and local housing and homelessness systems, which resulted in more streamlined, efficient, and effective service provision. BFH has increased use of homeless data tracking by utilizing the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS, and collaboration with the local homelessness coordinator entry system. We have increased housing inventory and better utilization of existing resources, and the adoption of course, housing first. And that is it for my slides. Thank you. Now Chris will tell you a little bit about the individuals units.
Thank you. So my name is Chris. I work with the Housing and Individuals Unit in the Housing and Homelessness branch. So I'm going to go over, oh cool, I got it right. The HDAP program, Housing and Disability Advocacy Program. It was a pilot, that was created in 2016 in order to assist individuals who are chronically homeless and who have or likely have a disability with applying for disability income benefits, SSI, SSDI, veterans benefits, while also providing housing assistance. So collaboration with other county departments, including those responsible for health, behavioral health, housing and community development, and the human and social services are essential to serving the individuals and families in need of HDAP. The HDAP program is intended to provide stable housing while assisting individuals in applying for disability income benefits by connecting individuals to housing early in the disability benefits process. The program received $45 million over 3 years from fiscal year 2017-18 to fiscal year 2019-2020. Like BFH, HDAP also requires a dollar-for-dollar county match, so the full program amount was $90 million. In 2019 budget bill, the program received an additional annual ongoing $25 million allocation, also with a dollar-for-dollar match. The ongoing competitive allocation is in progress right now. We hope to have the money allocated out by early 2020. So 39 counties currently operate the HDAP program, listed there. Recent legislation expanded HDAP to allow tribes to apply. So we look forward to reaching more Californians on the whole. The eligible population for HDAP includes homeless individuals with disabilities, including those that appear to be or are likely disabled for disability benefit programs, or likely eligible for disability benefit programs. People who are not currently receiving disability benefit income or who would receive additional disability benefit income may also be eligible for HDAP. The program prioritizes individuals who are chronically homeless and must rely most heavily on state or county funded programs. Counties are required to offer all 4 of the components that you see here as part of their program. So outreach, case management, disability benefit advocacy, and housing assistance. Outreach can include street level outreach as well as coordinating with existing homeless services systems. Disability benefits advocacy includes helping clients complete every aspect of their disability application or reapplication, from gathering documentation to filing appeals and ultimately the final determination. The program also provides many of the same housing supports and intensive case management services as our other rapid rehousing programs. Some counties operate their programs in-house while others contract the entire thing to local entities. To date, 2,530 individuals have been assisted with HDAP services, 818 of whom have been assisted with locating and moving into permanent housing. I will now discuss our newest program, the Home Safe program, which has a slightly different focus than other programs that we've talked about today. While others focus on people who have already fallen into homelessness, Home Safe focuses on prevention and tries to help older adults stay in their homes before they reach the point of becoming homeless. Home Safe supports APS agencies in building stronger collaboration and engagement between APS and their local homelessness system. The purpose of Home Safe is to support the safety and housing stability of APS clients who are experiencing or at imminent risk of experiencing homelessness. The program received $15 million in 2018 to be spent over 3 years from July 2018 through June 2021. Like BFH and HDAP, Home Safe also requires a dollar-for-dollar county match. So the program total is $30 million. Next slide will show the counties that are currently participating in the Home Safe pilot. 25 counties were funded for this pilot program, as you can see there. In order to be eligible for Home Safe, APS client must be experiencing or at risk of experiencing homelessness as a result of elder or dependent adult abuse, neglect, self-neglect, or financial exploitation. Counties implement a range of strategies to support housing stability for APS clients, including short-term financial assistance, legal assistance, eviction prevention, heavy cleaning, landlord mediation, and other services. Those in need of longer-term assistance are referred to other local homeless services. Home Safe program implementation began on July 1 of this year. So we are currently in the process of compiling this data, but part of this program does include a data collection and evaluation process. Before we move on to questions, I wanted to point out that rather than list off all the bill numbers and sections of statute, we have included, like was previously stated by Jeannie, I believe, a slide at the end with all relevant bill numbers, and I believe there's a link to them as well. Maybe not? Okay, well, yeah. So with that, thank you guys for coming today and for your interest in the CDSS housing programs. We are interested in answering any questions that you may have for us, as well as asking a few of our own questions. So to start off, I'd like to see if there's any questions that you have for us while we're here. No? Everything right now? Yeah.
I actually can speak quite loud. I don't like microphones. So for instance, just on the ladder program, I was just curious, have there been any barriers with regards to exchange of information between county entities? Because typically APS is a pretty good lockdown program, and I'm just wondering if that has been an identified barrier in any proposed legislation.
Jason, did you want to try to answer that? That's an ongoing thing.
Good afternoon, this is Jason, one of the managers in housing homelessness. We got ahead of that as best as we could have, the APS group in general, because there's an evaluation component. That was one of the requirements to actually get allocated, that they had agreements in place or could easily get agreements in place in order to be able to share the information we had. And I believe Bringing Families Home had a similar setup to that as well, because there's an evaluation component for the child welfare side too.
So are these, so like for instance, just trying to get into the mechanics, the counties who want to participate in these various programs, do they submit for grant money? Is it pursuant to a grant? Okay, and then by pursuant to the terms of the grant, you've built in these provisions that require them to make sure that they will, so for instance, I assume that the grant proposal is approved by a Board of County Supervisors, I would assume, and then built into that grant component is the requirement that you shall establish an avenue to communicate in relation to your confidentiality. It seems like a novel concept that hadn't come to me, that you're pushing this forward, because many times the barriers are we don't have statutory authority. Yet it sounds like there was ability to push through based on a grant agreement and for them to facilitate it pursuant to the grant.
I don't remember the actual statute, but in the grant application, we required them to certify that they would put a data use agreement into place. And a lot of the data that they're collecting or they're reporting on is through the local homeless data, HMIS. And so it's not uncommon that communities or evaluation entities will share that data to track folks coming in, exiting, and returning to homelessness within that community. And we have statutorily required data elements that we follow, yeah.
Good afternoon. Can a licensed facility avail of this grant?
Sorry, what was the question again? One more time.
I work for a community care licensing division, and I was just wondering if can a licensed facility like adult residential facility or residential care facility avail of any of these grants?
Yeah, I'm going to let Julie answer that one.
So all of our funding streams, because they come from CDSS, they can go to the county welfare department or the public social service agency in the county, or new to our programs, tribes are now eligible to apply as well. But so like a residential care facility could be a subcontractor potentially of the county welfare department or the child welfare department or the other public social service entity that's the recipient of the grant funds. But we don't contract direct, like CDSS doesn't contract direct with any other like private or nonprofit agencies.
Thank you. Just a question about the HDAP. Some reasons why some counties haven't joined the HDAP. Quite a few counties have not participated yet.
Right. So it was a competitive allocation for the pilot, and with the limited funds, we allocated what we could. But that number should potentially increase over this next funding, and I feel like Julie is going to add something to that.
So with the original allocation, we did put a base allocation out that was available to all 58 counties. We think that the match requirement could be a barrier to some of the 19 counties that didn't apply the first time. So there was a base allocation made available to all 58. 39 counties ended up responding and requesting funds, but we have 25 million that'll be going out soon. So hopefully more counties will be able to apply. The first year too was a pilot, so some county boards are more reserved in going in with a pilot, and they'll hang back and wait sometimes for ongoing annual funding, which we have now.
So I was kind of interested in the colorful pyramid chart, and it sounded like as I was listening that there's almost national establishment that this is a a process which works. In other words, I guess what my question is, how long has that pyramid been in existence? Because California is just now kind of getting on to following that pyramid. So I was wondering how much the research goes back to as an established program to achieve the outcomes.
Well, again, in California, the law was just passed in 2016, like you said, so it's new. But there's been, I mean, as I've been in the Housing Bureau for 2.5 years, and you read across the country, especially with the chronically homeless, this has been shown over and over for years and years to be very, very effective. I don't think it is a 10-year-old concept, but like maybe about almost. And so it's just, I think at first it was very novel. Like you're like, well, these are chronically homeless people. They couldn't possibly be ready for housing. And as they realized that that's really not the case, that getting them in housing first. So I think it was kind of a struggle to get that to be the understood, really, for people to really understand that it is actually really effective and that it saves money, it keeps people in housing. It's got, so I think it was a little uphill battle, but I feel like more and more it's very understood that this is the thing to do. This is the way to run housing programs. So
We're Googling over here, and I was gonna say 20 years, I think, and Marta pulled up that in early 2000s, the evidence and research was coming out that backing housing first philosophy. I think that the pyramid is Maslow's hierarchy that we borrowed from. So that's obviously older, but yeah.
Did you just want to stand up here? No? Okay. Any other questions from anybody else? Okay.
Just kind of curious as some of the wraparound or some of the supports services that are provided for those chronically homeless individuals who have now a shelter after years on the streets. What are some of the issues that the program is experiencing? Is there any sort of supervision or some sort of 24-hour on-call service available? Just kind of curious about that part of the journey.
You want me or you want to go for it?
I think I would say first off, because we're not directly administering the program, so from and through our county partners and often their subcontracted partners, folks that are very experienced in providing these types of services and engagement and have been doing so and doing it well for several years. So I would say probably the things that you think about, like 24-hour access to like a landlord or a shelter being able to contact a case manager or on-site case management, like in permanent supportive housing placements, like all the things that you would typically see in any housing program are definitely offered through these programs. And we strongly encourage, and what we look for in our competitive grant allocations are reputable housing providers that are working with clients. So if it's not the county welfare department, which it often isn't, it's in collaboration with, in partnership with.
And I'm Margalon, another manager in the Bureau. A lot of the providers tell us that you kind of have to see landlords also as clients. So creating relationships beforehand to avoid what might come. And then also sometimes the first housing option isn't the final one. So sometimes it requires multiple housing experiences, but you keep working with the client in a housing first manner. So definitely the experts are the housing providers, but we're learning a lot.
Hi, my name's Laura. I'm one of the analysts with the Bureau. I think the other thing that we hear a lot about is that intensive case management is really critical for a lot of these families and individuals, and building a rapport and working closely with them, because these are people who are part of other social services, as we've mentioned. And they've also, especially with chronically homeless, they've tried other housing interventions that may not have worked, especially the ones that were not housing first, where it was about housing readiness. And so sometimes with some of these folks, it takes a really long time just to build a good working relationship. And so I think too that one of the things we're finding, and one of the things the counties are finding, is that really investing in case management and putting in that time up front makes a big difference, so that you just overall have a better relationship so that they come to you before things get out of hand, or before another crisis hits, or as soon as another crisis hits. So then that way they're able to help retain housing, work with landlords, and keep people kind of on track as best they can.
One of the questions I had is general assistance, which many of those folks, that's a county funded program. Are those people eligible for these types of things? Is there a crossover with general assistance?
There definitely is a crossover with GA, probably most likely with the HDAP, Housing and Disability Advocacy Program, especially in the pilot years. I think that's where counties went for their first kind of outreach, was to their GA. But what we found over the past couple of years is that it really needs to go beyond GA, because there's so many either local barriers or mistrust with GA, or the requirement to pay back a loan, or whatever it is. The level of services with GA is really not hitting the most vulnerable clients in the community. So in our next round of guidance, you'll see that it's really pushing, like, you may have clients in GA or CalWORKs or that are getting CalFresh that are eligible, great. But when you're looking at the most vulnerable and you're prioritizing that way, you're likely going well beyond the GA population.
Any more? No? Okay, well, we've got some questions for you. So first off, I'd like to ask, how is the program system supporting or accommodating individuals and families who are homeless? Okay, go ahead and move on. Have you found there to be significant barriers to accessing these services for homeless families and individuals? And if there are there any program changes that have been made to accommodate these barriers? So anybody with programs out here first off, I guess? Yeah, so the question was, have you found there to be any significant barriers to accessing these services for homeless families or individuals? And are there any program changes that have been made to accommodate these barriers?
I think the gist of this was kind of not knowing who was going to be in the audience. It could be anyone from any of the CDSS groups here, is wondering, like, CalWORKs, CalFresh, like, have you guys found, or IHSS, for example, like, what do you do if you have somebody that's in need of IHSS but they're unhoused? Like, kind of how have you, if you in your own programs have experienced trying to serve unhoused people, and what the challenges are there? So I'm not sure if we have maybe quite everyone from every division in the department or anything, but.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll pose these last two questions, but if we don't have any program folks in here, then they'll just kind of hang out there. Are there any areas that you feel need additional support to better meet the needs of homeless clients? That'd be something that you might want to just kind of mull over, think about as you are doing work with the programs that you are working with. And additionally, how do you feel CDSS and the department as a whole can better serve the homeless clients, and what can you do to help facilitate that? But like I think as a parent, since there's not many program people here, it may just be something to mull as you go about your daily business.
So I know there's been some preliminary talk with IHSS about getting a housing component. Have you guys outreached to them? I'm just curious about what's going on behind the scenes in terms of making sure that, because IHSS is you're one of our clients, which is why you're asking all these questions if they're your clients. But is that going on behind the scenes? And also, Pete Cervinka wants little houses. Have you heard that one? Okay.
It's funny. Yes and yes on both. For IHSS, we actually met this morning with Kim and Pete and our IHSS counterpart. So we're definitely looking at that. I think IHSS is a great example, but there's probably many more, and that's why we're putting it out. So even as you're reviewing in legal documents, so if there's a tone there that we could change or tweak to better serve families or individuals that are served by our other programs that are experiencing homelessness, housing instability, we'd love to know how we can support that. But IHSS, that one's, we're thinking of some creative ways. We see IHSS providers that live with clients that may be precariously housed or could be housed more stably when they move in together as a great, like that's an option that some counties are currently employing that we want to look at further. That's the reality of a lot of families that and individuals that our programs work to serve, is that they're kind of one crisis away from homelessness sometimes. And so by bringing in other resources and other benefits and other income, we can help them be more stable long term. So we're definitely looking at that. I'm sure we'll be bugging you guys soon. The structures is what we're calling it for tiny homes for HSP, the CalWorks program, and HSTAP, the chronically homeless, targeting chronically homeless folks. We've allowed counties to use money to buy like a trailer, potentially a mobile home if they can find one that's a lower cost. The threshold's $25,000 is what we understand the state as a whole is able to pay for a support service like a supply. And so we're classifying housing as a kind of a supply similar to like work boots. So yeah, but any innovative or creative ideas that anyone comes across on how you can buy people tiny homes and put them on county land, like we'd love to hear, because it's a tough nut to crack, but we're like chipping away at it.
All right. Well, thanks again for joining us today. Our contact information is on the slide. So if you have any questions, feel free to reach out. You can also find information about all of our programs on the CDSS website. Don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions about homelessness or our other housing programs. And as promised, there's a list of references. If you have any interest, you can bug us and we will give you the links, or you can go find the links on Leginfo yourself.
Yes.
We'll make those.
Or just the whole presentation is going to be available?
All CDSS Exchange presentations are going to be uploaded in video recording format and with the accompanying slide presentations on the DSS source page under CDSS Exchange.
Copies of the slides.
Copies of the slides.
Thank you guys.
Thank you all for coming again. Again, all the materials will be available on the DSS source page under CDSS Exchange. Also, if you have any desire to be up here in the hot seat and share what your work unit does, or you know someone whose work impacts the work here at CDSS, please reach out to the Enterprise Bureau and we'll get you scheduled. Thank you.